You can't make this up. Despite growing tensions between the US and Canada, the much-hyped American boycott of our northern neighbor seems to be a failure. While political and border security issues have deterred some US citizens from visiting Canada this summer, the reality is clear. Canada is still on track to have a successful tourism year, and US businesses are the ones feeling the real impact. Welcome back to America Info. Let's take a deeper dive into what's really happening here. The TD Economics Report recently published a fascinating breakdown of the situation. Despite the apparent drop in U.S. tourists visiting Canada, the Canadian tourism industry is thriving thanks to increased domestic travel and a rise in international visitors from countries like the UK, Mexico, and China. This shift has ensured that Canada will likely offset the loss of U.S. tourism and emerge from this situation relatively unscathed. In fact, the Canadian tourism sector has been proactive in counteracting the blow from fewer Americans crossing the border. The report predicts tourism spending in Canada will rise by 2 to 4% this year, while cross-border spending, primarily from U.S. tourists, will likely decrease by 5 to 10%. The key here is domestic travel. Canadians, more than ever, are opting to vacation within their own country. Early signs indicate that domestic tourism spending is up, driven by the growing preference for local travel options and initiatives like the Canada Strong Pass, which encourages Canadians to explore their own backyard by offering discounts and perks. One of the most significant signs of this shift comes from Airbnb, where domestic travel searches have increased by nearly 20%. According to TD Bank Group, a staggering 64% of Canadians are planning to travel within their own country this year, highlighting a growing sense of national pride and solidarity. But what about the American boycott of Canada? Well, it's turning out to be much less effective than anticipated. Despite initial drops in U.S. visitors, especially American car trips to Canada, which saw an 8.4% decline, Canada's tourism sector is holding its own. Non-U.S. international tourists are stepping in to fill the gap, with visitors from countries like the UK, Mexico, and China showing increased interest in Canada. In fact, the UK saw a 14% rise in visitors, while Mexico and China experienced increases of 22% and 11% respectively. So while the American boycott may have made some headlines, the overall impact on Canada's economy is minimal, especially considering the influx of international visitors and the uptick in domestic travel. Now, let's turn the lens back to the U.S. While Canada may have weathered the storm, the U.S. cannot say the same. The so-called Canadian boycott of the U.S. is having a much more pronounced effect. Canadians are now opting to stay closer to home or head to Ontario instead of traveling south to the U.S. And this shift is costing American businesses dearly. In fact, the TD Economics Report estimates that international visitor spending in the U.S. could drop by 7% in 2025, with U.S. tourism to Canada experiencing a major loss of revenue as a result. It seems like the U.S. is losing some of its high-spending international tourists to Canada. Visitors who once flocked to American hotspots are now heading to Ontario, where they are likely getting more value for their money. For communities near the U.S.-Canada border, this shift is already causing serious economic pain, as local businesses, especially those relying on tourism, are seeing a significant drop in sales. So, what does this all mean for U.S.-Canada relations? The tables have turned. While the American boycott of Canada has been ineffective, the Canadian boycott of the U.S. is succeeding in a big way. This dynamic shift in cross-border tourism could have lasting repercussions for U.S. businesses, especially those reliant on Canadian tourists. The question now is, how long will this situation last, and what will it mean for U.S.-Canada relations moving forward? Stay tuned as we continue to monitor this developing situation and bring you the latest insights. If you found this video informative, please like, share, and subscribe for more updates on global relations and economic impacts.